Before we move on to geographical indications, I'd like to share a kind of insight on the resources that are owned by communities, which are traditionally known, conserved, which includes biological resources, which includes folklore or other kind of knowledge such instead of by an individual. So generally, when we talk about intellectual property, people concentrate on corporate properties like patents or others which are considered as industrial property, and also on copyrights, which though they are not considered as industrial property per se, are still relevant because they are commercially significant. When we come to specific resources, which are mostly they are protected on a defensive scale rather than on enforcement rights, specifically to prevent biopiracy as well as other kind of intrusions or encroachments into community. Find that they are largely divided into biodiversity, geographical indications, as well as protection of plant varieties, each of which are not exactly excludable from each other. There are lots of overlaps between these general categories. And among these, we find that geographical indications, they hold their own as an intellectual property as well as an industrial property. And you will understand why that is so. This particular picture, I hope you are able to see it. Yes.
We are able to see your slides, ma'am.
Yes. It's written Roquefort cheese there. Can you see the slide?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
What are you able to see?
We are in the first page of your slide, geographical indications in India, along with your credentials.
Okay. Okay. One moment. Are you able to see this another
Yes,
slide right
yes,
now?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Roquefort cheese,
Okay.
right?
Yes, yes. So this particular cheese Hello, I apologize for the difficulty. Yeah, I'll share.
You can just.
So as I was saying, I hope it is visible to you. I hope the slide is visible to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the story goes that there was a person, a shepherd, who took the ewes, that the female sheep, out to graze in a mountainside, and he was eating his food, his lunch, which was bread and cheese, inside a cave, an underground cave, which is naturally formed in France. And he saw a beautiful girl in the distance, so he left his bread and cheese there, and he went off in search of the girl. After some days, he came back to that cave and saw that the cheese which he had left there, it had grown some things on it, as you can see in the picture here. He tried it, and it's a kind of blue cheese, and he loved the texture, he loved the taste, and that is how Roquefort cheese was born, as per history. Now, this particular cheese is unique, and it's not possible for somebody else in another part of the world to recreate, because this particular cheese comes from milk which is grown from milk which is which is taken from ewes or female sheep in that particular place, and preserved as per conditions. Cheese how it is made in that particular place, unique because of the underground caves from which that particular cheese is stored, and also with respect to the process in which that cheese is made. And also, if you think about it, because of the organism that converts cheese to blue cheese. So all of these characteristics make it so unique that the particular cheese cannot be seen as anything but very, very unique to that particular place. And this is an example of a geographical indication where the product or the goods, they draw from the region and from the contributions of the people, so that the qualities or the reputation or the characteristics of the product are very, very unique. Has the slide changed now? Can you see the next one?
No, ma'am.
Are you able to see a slide with examples of appellations of origin in it?
No, 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 no. You're still in the same slide.
Okay. Has it changed now?
No, ma'am. Yeah, it does. It has. It has changed.
It has changed. Okay. So this particular slide is are examples of international geographical indications. You can see tequila from Mexico. You can see coffee beans from Mexico again. Costa Rica banana. You have toys which are made from chulucanas in Peru. You can see pots and ceramics from Hungary and handmade carpet from Iran. Each of these, they come from a country which has the tradition to boast, and where the community has contributed to isolating the characteristics of this particular product, which is made from indigenously sourced products, as well as the community itself, their culture is linked to those particular products. So one hand, it is very, very culturally sensitive and culturally significant. On the other hand, with respect to trade aspects of it, they are very important as well. For instance, here you can see the trade agreements, international regional trade agreements with the necessary intellectual property provisions. And you can see the geographical indications, particularly in the European side of see that GIs, they dominate the trade agreements, the regional agreements, which contain intellectual property provisions. Now, if you look at the role that geographical indications plays, you find that value addition as well as quality control, these are the most important aspects of geographical indications. They provide impetus to local and rural development. They create niche markets for high quality products. For instance, if you take France, which is a country which has lots of geographical indications to boast, or you take Switzerland or any other European country for that matter, you find that they have created a niche market and they are very good at enforcing them as well. and investment. So geographical indications, they usually contain a kind of symbiotic relationship with each other, and also with the tourism which is promoted in as part of that particular country's commercial outline as well. And the information about the geographical origin, it is linked, like I said, with the history and culture. And also the information, like I said, there is a story behind a geographical indication, and that is usually tied up with the place, and it is also promoted as part of the industrial management of that particular resource. And incentivization of GI markets, this is very, very important, because we often find that once a geographical indication has become strong from a particular region, other geographical indications are also identified and promoted, and this usually leads to a lot of tourist interest in the place, and also other kinds of development of rural regions. So the main aspects with respect to geographical indications are value addition, which comes from registration and also from the promotion of those rights, and quality control. That is the other aspect of it. Only when geographical indications are combined with quality control from the side of the state or from the side of the producers to the supply side, only in that case can you actually say that geographical indications, they have managed to successfully convert the potential to economic success. Now, geographical indications, they, like I mentioned earlier, they are a symbol of collective ownership of property, and there is a link between the product and the place of origin. And in French, they call this particular feature the link between the place and the product as terroir, or Terroir. It's pronounced terroir. And this particular link between the producer and the geographical indications, that is very, very important, because only if you're able to establish that will geographical indication be granted in the first place. And secondly, it is only through that exclusivity of that quality can you actually capitalize on the commercial potential of geographical indications as well. To give you an example, we have heard of a wine called champagne. What is important, or what is so unique about champagne? You hear about celebrations, champagne dinners and other things, which actually indicate that it is of a premium quality. And champagne, can anyone guess where champagne comes from? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any guesses as to where champagne comes from? Can we make champagne in India?
Ma'am, is it from?
It is France. It is France. And there's a district called Champagne in France. And it is from that district where you have unique champagne grapes. And from those grapes, the fermented juice of those grapes is converted into a bubbly drink, which is called a champagne. And like I said, historically, there is a value which has been added to that particular product, which you cannot make in any other. Probably in intellectual property, you have heard about a case of the Spanish champagne, where Spain started manufacturing and selling bubbly drink made from white grapes, which was named as Spanish champagne and sold in England. So the court looked into it and said that you cannot manufacture champagne in Spain, because champagne can only be made in Champagne district in France and in no other place. Even within France, if there is another comparable drink, you cannot call it champagne, because the link to that place is most important, and that is probably what terroir is about. There are different standards of geographical indications. If you look at some geographical indications, there are increasing link between the place and the product. Like for instance, if you look at agricultural products, if you look at basmati rice, for instance, you may not be able to grow basmati rice in another place because of the unique geographical conditions, which are what have made basmati rice that long grain aromatic rice. You probably will not be able to make it anywhere else. You may have also read about the Texmati and Ricemati cases of Ricetech in USA, which was an example of biopiracy, which can happen if we do not adequately protect our geographical indications or products which are commercially relevant to us. The three major conditions which are important to identification of a geographical indication are that firstly, it must relate to a good. A service cannot be a geographical indication. It has to deal with a product or it has to be about goods. These goods must originate from a defined area. And the defined area can be a very, very small area, like I told you about the Champagne district of France. It can be a larger valley, for instance, the Napa Valley. It can be a state, like for instance, you have the Odisha Rasgulla, or you have the Bangla Rasgulla, which comes from a particular state as such. So within the state, the identification of the geographical indication happens. It can be from a specific country, like it can be a Swiss chocolate or Swiss knife is an example of a country being the defined geographical area. It can even be across countries. Like for instance, if you look at countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we are all linked to each other. We are all part of a subcontinent, but the boundaries are built by us. We are the ones who demarcated these places as different countries. But ultimately, the terrain is the same, the environment is the same, the humidity or climatic conditions are the same, and also the features of these places may be the same. That is the reason basmati rice is not just confined to India. It can be grown in Pakistan or in other parts of the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, which have the same characteristics. So the defined area, whatever be the area, it must be defined and it must be supplied or submitted to the geographical indications registry. Uniqueness of the goods must be linked to the geographical origin. Like I said, there is something called Geographical Indications Registry set up under the Government of India. And this particular registry looks into the applications for GIs. So you need to establish that there is a link between the geographical area and the qualities or reputation which comes out of it. And that establishment happens through a statement of case which you need to submit alongside the defined area through a map as well as other details of the product, what are the unique features. If you are talking about a plant variety or a specific type of an agricultural product, you need to give the scientific details about it as well. And also, if you are talking about a manufactured product, you need to explain why it becomes a geographical indication. So having said all this, how many geographical indications do you think we have in India? A random guess. How many GIs may we have, or how many GIs are possible? 100, 200, less than 100, 50, 60? Any guess? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. So just any ballpark figure will do. There is no, I mean, there is a right answer, but it doesn't matter even if you're not right. Okay. All right. Since nobody has adding a guess, I'll give you the answer. There are 370 geographical indications in India, which have been registered till date. And if you're interested, you can go into the IP India Services website and you can look into the geographical indications registry details, wherein all the applications as well as the details or documents which have been submitted as well as the certificate of grant are available, and you are able to pursue these in that particular site. Now, again, I don't know if any of you will, at least guess an answer, but if you know or if you can think of any of the names for these, I'll be very happy. What is that fruit on top left? Are you able to see the slide?
No, ma'am, the slide has not changed.
Which slide are you watching? Which slide are you looking at?
Examples of appellations of origins.
Okay, all right. Just a sec. Are you able to see the slide?
Yeah, you can see that, right?
Okay. The fruit on the top left, it comes from Nagaland and it's called Naga tree tomato. The fruit below it is Mahabaleshwar strawberries. And on the right top of the slide, you can see marble, which is called Makrana marble. It is historically relevant because it was used in historical monuments like Taj Mahal and other famous monuments. You have the Chanpatna toys, which you can see on the top bottom side of the slide. And these are unique because they are said to be made from natural lacquer and colors, which means that it is more environment friendly as well as child friendly because these are toys ultimately. So these are all examples of geographical indications. As you can see from this particular picture, geographical indications may be agricultural, it may be natural like the Makrana marble or Kola gold, or you can have manufactured products which are made by artisans, which are made by textile manufacturers, which are made by communities, which are engaged in these kind of crafts and products. You can also think of, Kolhapuri chappals or Kanchipuram saris, Pochampalli ikat. All of these fall within the definition of geographical indications. So in India, if you look at the definition of geographical indications, are you able to see the slide? Section 2, clause 1, clause E?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so it defines geographical indications as natural or agricultural goods or indications which identifies them as such, which should originate or be manufactured in territory of a country or region or locality where the given quality, reputation or other characteristics are essentially attributable to its geographical origin. So let me ask you a question. When we take the example of a silk like Kanchipuram silk, how do we prove that the quality or reputation is attributable essentially to the geographical place of origin? How exactly are we able to do that? Any answers?
To trace back its origin.
Yeah, you can historically look at when it originated, isn't it? Okay, so I'll give an example. What people usually do is, like I don't know who answered, but we trace it back to the place of origin. We think of when it actually is documented or when there is some account in history about it. So Kanchipuram saris, for instance, it is made from silk, which doesn't come from Kanchipuram. It is imported or it is acquired from some other place. The looms are made in Kanchipuram. The way that the pallu is attached to the sari is again very, very unique. And the designs which are used by the artisans is also very, very unique. And historically, there is an account to Kanchipuram saris which comes from a small village in Tamil Nadu called Kanchipuram. And where the guild, the artisans, they have a guild and they had a particular society as such. And that is actually the reason why we are able to link the quality or reputation or unique features, which includes designs or the specific way of making it, to the geographical origin. Can I start a silk sari shop in Kochi tomorrow and say that I'm selling Kanchipuram saris? The answer is no, because only people from Kanchipuram who are part of that community who have been granted the geographical indication alone are able to manufacture it or sell it, or they should give me permission that yes, you can use the word Kanchipuram sari in your promotional material. Otherwise, I would be infringing on the rights of these people. I hope that is clear. Now, the next, like I mentioned, there are lots of geographical indications in India, and the 370 GIs that we have in our country, you can see that the majority of it comes from handicrafts, 224 handicrafts, when compared to very few numbers of other kind of materials. Natural, we only have one, which is the Makrana marble. Agricultural products also, we have substantially a lot of mangoes and bananas and spices. Food stuff, which is based on recipes, like you have the Hyderabadi Halim, or you have the Palani Panchamrit, or you have the Tirupati Laddu. All of these are food stuff. Now, if you think about it, food stuff which is based on a recipe like Bikaneri Bhujia, for instance, it is very unique and it's very famous and it has a quality and reputation. But how exactly do we link it to the place? there are lots of questions which usually come my way when I explain about this, saying that how do we link the place to the product? Can't we make it in another place? Can't we actually make Agra ke pedhe in Kerala? Can't we bring that the raw materials and get the recipe and make it in Kerala? Why should GI be granted to these kind of products? So this is a very controversial area, especially if you look at Tirupati Laddu. There are lots of people who question why GI should be granted to Tirupati Laddu at all. And the reason why they say is linked to the temple itself from which that particular laddu is manufactured. Now, again, it is controversial if you think about it. And also you might think about the fact that the Hyderabadi biryani, which is very, very famous, and I'm sure everyone likes it, but that biryani, in spite of say 10 years of people pursuing it, the GI registry refuses to accept the registration because they say that there is no consistency. They are not able to document from what point this particular recipe became, consistently made and linked to Hyderabad, because you know that biryani is essentially something which came from another place, Arabic or Persian or Iranian influences. And so we cannot really say that it originated in Hyderabad. So recipe based GIs, they are very controversial and there are lots of questions about them. But that is the case. Now, if you look at the GIs in Kerala, particularly, there are lots of GIs which come from Kerala. If you look at fabrics, you have the Kuttampalli dhotis or the handloom products. You have the Chendamangalam, you have Balaramapuram Kaitari, fabrics. You have lots of jewelry and other things. You have handicrafts. You have bananas. You have pineapples. You have lots of products which come from different parts of Kerala, rice varieties, lots of them. You have the Navara, you have Pokali, you have Kaipad, you have Matta, Palakkad and Matta. All of these come from one place or the other. You even have the Jeeragashala and Gandhagashala, which come from the northern part of Kerala. So Kerala is very, very rich in geographical indications, and we have lots of registrations as well. But again, there seems to be something wrong with how exactly these registrations translate to economic successes, because usually I ask people from my class if anyone is here from Thrissur. Okay, is anyone here who's basically from Thrissur? Anyone who's native, as we say in Kerala, is in Thrissur or Kannur? Anyone? Okay, because I don't know you personally. Anyway, I'm not going to refute your answer as well. But yeah, okay. So usually there is this place in Thrissur called I don't know if there is a place, but there's a banana called Changali Kodan banana, which is quite famous in certain circles. But even people from Thrissur do not know about this Changali Kodan banana. Similarly, Vazhakulam pineapple. I think Vazhakulam pineapple is a bit more famous. There are also from Kannur, there is a type of mango called Kuttiyad mango. They are supposed to be very, very sweet and they contain certain nutrients very in different proportions from usual mangoes. All of these have been granted geographical indications. But when you try to ask people, how do we commercialize it? There seems to be a bit of a problem. And that is one main reason why I chose this topic of why exactly do we advantages, do they actually translate? Now, if you look at any textbook, it will tell you that there are many advantages of the geographical indication, to be registered. First is that it is a community right. Therefore, you don't need to show that you are the single person or the single family which is making it. An entire community is there, and it kind of makes sense to have a collective. For instance, there is an association of the Aranmula Mirror Society that it's a registered society. And that society takes care of the marketing of Aranmula Mirror as well as takes actions against infringing products. And administrative protection. So if somebody infringes your geographical indication, you have the right to file an FIR in the nearest police station and report the infringement. You also can pursue civil and criminal remedies in case of GI infringement. Product differentiation, like I said earlier, value addition and consequent product, marketing, better opportunities for marketing and better prices which can come in from that. For instance, Italy is one example. Italy has a lot of geographical indications. Parma ham is an example, certain wines which come from it, but also certain manufactured products, handicrafts, which is the most famous violin in the world. Most famous, most expensive. Any answers?
Does something like the Stradivarius?
Stradivarius, yes.
Yeah.
Stradivarius violins, they used to come from a very small part of Italy, and like you said correctly, it is worth billions of dollars. Okay, so no one can own a Stradivarius right now. They are given certain communities like Philharmonic societies are given custodianship of Stradivarius. You can take it for a loan, but you can't really buy it right now. No one is that rich, I suppose. But recently, Italy's dominance in violence, it's being taken over by another country. Again, any guesses as to which country that might be? They come up with cheaper, much more affordable versions of handmade violin. The main country which is a competitor to almost every other country, it is China. So China has now, it's just like other sectors, even in case of violins, they're coming up with comparable violins which are handmade. And I don't know about the quality, but yeah, they are right now dominating the scene. So that is again one example of how, you say that there is a product differentiation. But when you compare the products, if you're able to sell things without the GI tag as well in international communities, sometimes they may get away with these kind of things. Consumer welfare. So you go to the shop and you actually want to buy Palakkadan Matta. So you see a packet saying Palakkadan Matta. It is by a brand. You buy it and bring it home. And if you're a person who actually knows what Palakkadan Matta tastes like, when you eat it, you will understand that this is not Palakkadan Matta. So allowing a competitor to bring out a product, passing it off as another person's, you cannot, it is not conducive to consumer welfare. So that is again another reason why geographical indications, the registration as well as enforcement should be very strictly made. And marketing strategies, like I said, brand recognition. There is something called tequila, which comes from Mexico. It's a liquor which is made from blue agave plants. And there are 5 districts in Mexico which manufacture this particular tequila. Tequila is sold in USA by certain brands, certain companies. Celebrities have now taken up the sale of tequila. You have brands which are marketed by George Clooney. Recently, Kendall Jenner, I think, she started her own tequila brand and she started selling it. Now, this has brought claims of cultural appropriation. Appropriation in the sense that somebody is taking advantage of a long tradition of another community and selling it off as passing it off as their own, saying that tequila has to come from Mexico, but here you have a celebrity who's selling it, saying that this is tequila. So that is an example of a cultural appropriation, and that is antithetical to what a geographical indication is supposed to do. Now, we know that trademarks, they identify the source and also they talk about the quality. For instance, when you buy an Apple phone, you know that it is manufactured by Apple, which has a very strong customer base and it has a strong reputation, as being, a cut above the rest of the competitors. I'm not saying it is true or not. I'm just saying this is the perception. So when you talk about these kind of source identifiers, they do matter because they are huge brands and they carry a lot of weight in the logos or in the colors, which is the reason why infringement of trademarks, it takes up to billions of dollars in the court. GIs are also source identifiers because when you see a particular GI or when you hear about a particular GI, there is an immediate connection to the geographical region where it comes from or it should come from. And so you can use names and logos. One example that you can think of is Darjeeling tea, which was the first GI to be registered in India. They registered the tea as well as the logo of a lady who carries 2 tea leaves. That is the logo. So the logo as well as the the tea itself is registered as a geographical indication. It guarantees quality. So you know that Darjeeling tea was big on market even before India got independence. Even during British time, Indian tea, Ceylon tea, they were all very famous. We know that people wanted to come to India primarily for the use of our natural resources like spices or tea, which were big on international markets. So that is one reason why countries with rich biodiversity like us, we should be able to convert geographical indications to valuable business interests. Now, whether that happens or not is ultimately what I wanted to examine here. So just to clarify before we move on, there are three terms which I think you should know. We have an indication of source, which means that particular name or that particular indication tells you where it came from. There is an appellation of origin, which contains, like, appellation means name, so the name of the region should also be involved. Then the country of origin is the place from where or from which locality this particular product comes from, and from where the product derived its reputation. So my question is, if I say that there are three circles, which circle is indication of source, which one would be appellation of origin, and which one would be geographical indication? Any guesses? I'm going to share here. Are you able to see this? Are you able to see this slide?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We are.
Yeah. Okay. So the biggest circle is indication of source. It's not particularly an enforceable right because it just says that this product comes from this place. So you can think about tea like Ceylon tea, which comes from which country? Ceylon tea should come from which country? Which country used to be called Ceylon?
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Very good. So Sri Lanka, it's very famous for tea. So if you buy tea and says it is made in Sri Lanka, it is an indication of a source, because they're not saying this is Ceylon tea, which is a GI. They're just saying that it is made in Sri Lanka. Now, the problem with indication of source is that when you say it is made in Sri Lanka, there are examples where tea from Sri Lanka is sourced and mixed with cheaper tea from India or from China or from other places and then sold as tea from Sri Lanka. So in international market, this kind of reduces the reputation of Sri Lankan tea and is a big problem that they're trying to solve right now. Next, you have the green circle, which is the middle one, which is geographical indications. It is a much more kind of expansive one because it doesn't demand that an appellation should be linked. An example for that can be basmati rice, because basmati does not contain the appellation of a place or the name of a place linked to it, but it is still considered as a geographical indication. So GI can be an appellation of origin, but it needn't always have an appellation in it. Appellations of origin are the niche kind of GIs, which contains the name of the place as well. So in Europe particularly, appellations of origin which can claim a long period of antiquity can be called as PDO or protected designations of origin, and they carry a great deal of weight in European Union. Now, if you look at the international arena of protection, the TRIPS agreement, which contains provisions, Article 22, 23, and 24 are significant. As you can see from the picture, every country in the world does not protect geographical indications as such. You have the choice under TRIPS agreement of protecting GIs either as GIs itself or through any other kind of method of protection. Like, for instance, USA protects it as a certification trademark. They don't have geographical indications as a separate legislation like we do have in India. So Article 22, it talks about general minimum protection, and it says that main point of GIs is that public should not be misled about the name. So you cannot sell Scotch whiskey in India if it did not come from Scotland. So there was a case which was taken up by the Scotch Whisky Association in India, and it was about Indian-made Scotch whiskey. They had a product which was called Royal Scot. It contained the name of Royal Scot, and it had a picture of a Scot with a bagpipe. And I think Mohan Meakin Association was making it, and Scotch Whisky Association sued them because their point is that Scotch whisky should be made in from hops which grow in Scotland, from grains which are fermented in Scotland, from water which contains peat, which also should come from Scotland. Otherwise, you cannot call or you cannot use the term Scot in any of the whiskey which is made in India. And there is an additional protection which is granted to wines and spirits, which means that the labels, style, type, or kind, or like, or all of these cannot be used with respect to wines and spirits. So today, if you look at it, it means that Article 23 grants special scope of protection for wines and spirits, and Article 24 says that you are entitled to expand the minimum rights. So you know that TRIPS only grants you minimum rights. You can expand it through regional or other kind of trade agreements, and that scope is given to the countries within this particular legislation. Now, coming to the aspect of quality control, you may remember that earlier we discussed about the aspect of value addition and quality control. If you take an example of a product which comes from France, like Bordeaux wine, or you take example of ham which comes from Italy, like Parma ham, or Roquefort cheese, which again comes from France, or tequila which comes from Mexico, we find that the nations themselves, they have governmental institutions or governmental machineries in place to make sure that there is a quality control. And that quality control goes to increasing the value of the product itself. You may recall certain times when mangoes, Ratnagiri Alfonso mangoes from India, were sent back from Europe because they contain certain pests in these mangoes. Certain consignments of spices were sent back from UAE to India because they did not satisfy the quality criteria in UAE. So these, when they become a regular feature, it goes to raising questions about the quality of GIs that we are sending from our country to other. Now, property value, bringing foreign revenue to our country. If you look at Italy, if you look at France, Switzerland, all these countries, they have a lot of money coming in from their geographical indications. Scotch whisky, in fact, is an example where a product of Scotland, it has not only geographical indications, but it has even trademarks registered in various parts of the world. And that happens when you're able to enforce those rights because of the quality, and there is no compromise. But in our case, in Indian GIs particularly, we find that there is a great deal of work left to be done, which means that the GIs in India, we can call them as shy GIs or diffident GIs because they don't seem to have the same presence of mind, or the scope which other foreign GIs they do have and enjoy. The reasons for that, if you look at it, it could be because registration itself, it grants no advantages. Because you have a registration does not mean that you become famous or that tomorrow onwards you're going to fetch premium products. The main problem with that is with respect to the quality of products itself and the continuity or the consistency which should come from it. I'll relate to you something which happened in Kochi as well as in certain parts of Alleppey and Thrissur. There is a type of rice which can grow in even salty water or saline water, which are mainly cultivated in backwaters where you have a combination of fresh water and seawater. So in these places, there grows a particular type of variety of rice called Pokali rice, and it is ultimately organic in nature because they have a kind of cycle of cultivation of rice and then shrimp and then rice again. So the product is ultimately organic. And these farmers, they won an award called Plant Genome Savior Award of 1 lakh rupees from the government some years ago. But the point is, today, if you ask the families who Pokali rice, many of them are not able to continue it because their children are not able to eke out a living from it and they don't want to continue it anymore. Another problem is there are certain hybrid varieties which even they feel are not really the traditional varieties, and therefore there is something wrong with that particular product. And also because of the weather vagaries, we know how agriculture is in our country. There is no consistency. There is no guarantee that you are able to make money out of a particular year's crop, because floods come, droughts come, we don't know how things are going to be. So they do not have an assurance that next year we are going to have a particular crop, so that there can be a continuous chain of export or even local sales. So that is one problem that we see with respect to agricultural products, particularly from India. Another problem with respect to manufactured products, I will come to in just a bit. Now we feel that we find that registration converting to economic success, that somehow becomes lost in translation. There is a big problem which happens because of this particular lack of translation, and we'll be examining that in just a bit. Are you able to see the slide of Subhash Jewelry?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So this particular case, it again happened with respect to a geographical indication from Kannur called Payanur Pavitra Ring or Payanur Pavitra Mondiram. This particular ring is made in specific with a specific type of material. It's made using darbha grass, which is a kind of grass which is used in certain kinds of rituals and all. And it contains certain very unique characteristics. Like for instance, I don't know if you've seen this particular ring. It contains 3 lines which are supposed to denote our nadis in Ayurveda, and there are 7 points in the ring which are again supposed to have spiritual significance. Now this particular ring, as per the application which was submitted to the Geographical Indications Registry, it comes from a particular Tarawad, it comes from a particular family in Kannur, and they trace the history back to 1794, and then stated that from that point onwards, this particular family has been making this ring, and it has connection to the Subramania temple, which used to be in Payanur, but which was destroyed by Tipu Sultan's army, and later it was constructed, and they could show the documentation as well. So what happened is there is a consultative committee which is formed by the GI registry, and they looked into the application and saw that it is filed by Payanur Pavitra Ring Artisans, which is a collective, and so granted the geographical indication. But after some time, there were other people who came up with opposition to this particular grant, saying that first of all, this ring originated, or there's a documentation of it in 1792, 2 years before the submitted documents, which means that that is the point of origin. They were also able to show that the family which has been making these rings from that point onwards, they were not notified of these proceedings. They did not know about it because it's a very rural village. Now, in Land Acquisition Act, for instance, when there is such an event happening, notices must be published in local language newspapers. So here the IPAB, when it had to look into the case, they said that it should be made mandatory that in such instances of application, you have to publish that this is going to be granted in that region. So in Payanur, in newspapers, they should contain a notice that there is an application which is received. So you get a notice and you can file an opposition. At this point of time, there was an opposition which was filed to the registry, which was not accepted. The opposition was not accepted, meaning that the grant was actually given. If you look at who a producer is as per section 11 of the Act, it can be any association of persons or producers or an organization which represents the interest of the producers. So if you look at the GIs registered in India, you find that majority of them are filed by the central government or state government or some university or some other governmental association or a body like handicrafts or other kind of boards which are statutory in nature. So the question of whether this is what is envisaged, because when you deny rights to an artisan or a traditional farmer or a person who has been involved in it culturally since generations, is that actually the right way to go about it? Here you can see certain publications about this particular ring, and also the case. If you're interested, please go through it. So here the court decided in favor of the family which has been traditionally involved in it, and took off the name of the Payanur Pavitra ring artisans from the registry, saying that they are not the rightful claimants to the title of GI owners or producers. So this actually goes to show that there may be many GIs which firstly they are not identified and therefore no one is. Secondly, the question of validity of these registrations itself, in a way, it seems to be a bit in question. You can think about the tussle which went on between Bangla Rasgulla and Odisha Rasagulla. If you're interested, please do read about it. There was a tussle between two governments, two state governments, saying who is the rightful owner of Rasgulla as a GI. Though these two are completely different from each other. The Bangla Rasgulla is white, and the Odisha Rasagola, as it is called, it's brownish white in color. And they're two different recipes altogether, but still there was a tussle. Ultimately, both of them got GIs. You have Bangla Rasgulla as well as the Odisha Rasgola right now. Another example, so I mentioned earlier that we'll come back to examining the question of problems are faced by artisans or handicraft people. One thing that you may think about with respect to these kind of handicrafts or textiles or other things is the problem which Chinese violin makers raised to Stradivarius from Italy. When you're able to get cheaper versions, wouldn't you go for it? That is the main question. So you can think about two saris, Banarasi as well as Chanderi saris. These two are registered geographical indications. But Chanderi saris, there are lots of duplicates. Both of these have lots of duplicates in the market. But generally, Chanderi, you can say, have made a better translation of the rights under GI than Banarasi. And I'll tell you why. So Chanderi and Banarasi, they have very similar stories. They are traditionally linked to small villages, small areas, and the artisans have been trying to make a livelihood out of it, but failing very, very miserably. So the Chanderi sari, the village which makes Chanderi saris, they tied up with with a fashion designing as well as a management institute, and managed to market it very well. For instance, they approached the Three Idiots team, and there was a big promotion with respect to Chanderi saris being awarded to Kareena Kapoor, who was acting in that movie, who wore it to certain functions, thereby increasing the the value of the Chanderi sari. Banarasi sari, on the other hand, you find that there are lots of fake saris available in the market. Some are even sold from Banaras, where these saris come from. And sometimes even the GI holders are complicit because there are no takers for the very, very expensive models. So they think, why don't we compromise on it? We'll bring in, cheap versions of it. Even they sell the knockoffs. And that is one reason why we find the GIs, the translation hasn't happened very well. Another reason why this is very, very relevant is because if you think about handcrafted saris, and if you think about machine loom based saris, even to the artisans who are involved in these, we find that there is a lot of differences. For instance, if you have seen a movie called Malaysian, it helps you to understand that with respect to a GI like Pochampalli Ikkat, the women who make these designs, they have to toil night and day to make a particular design. And for that, from the very young age to a time when they are able to actually use the loom, their shoulders, they become so incapacitated that after an age of 40, they become completely not able to do anything. And that is also a price that we pay. And why don't we think about modernization of these processes while still maintaining the traditional quality of it, which is ultimately something to be explored. So if you look at IP, the registration of GIs, we find that there are IP facilitation cells, but and there are agricultural universities. There are even some law universities which have involved in registration of GIs. And you find this is a bit dated, but you find that there are lots of applications which are being filed. So the 370 is just a number for now. I feel that more and more GIs are going to come out in the very near future. You can think of examples of the Kerala Agricultural University, which was instrumental in bringing out and registering GIs. You have examples of Varakulam pineapple, you have Gandhagashala, Jeeragashala rice, you have the Nilambur teak, you have the Malabar pepper, you have Marayur jaggery, you have Changalikodan bananas. All of these were registered with the help of the Kerala Agricultural Universities, which has been doing a brilliant job about it. At the same time, after registration, what happens, that is also something which we must think of, and that is where I feel most of the problems actually come out. So my concluding thoughts are these. GIs are supposed to be a quality mark. They are supposed to be a mark which is used in commerce. They are considered as an industrial property. They are supposed to bring in value, and they are supposed to bring in premier prices. But it is tied up with capacities for branding, promoting, marketing, facilitating distribution channels, as well as promotion and also export related facilities. These are all tied up with the hype of geographical indications. And if you look at how things are happening in more successful GIs, for instance, there was an example of a coffee, which is, I think, Coorg coffee, which tied up with certain kinds of, the chain, the coffee, what is it, coffee shop chains, and then brought in these niche markets. And so strategies have to be developed accordingly, and that is one way that we can help these farmers. But like I said, consistency is something which is to be very much explored. Value addition is something which is associated with quality. What happens here in India is registration is given the paramount importance. But after that, what happens to the product? Why we should be standardizing the products? What we can do to help motivate the farmers as well as the others to capitalize on the commercial potential of GIs, that has not yet become complete, or that has not become achieved fruition yet. Then quality norms and standards, like I mentioned, if you take the example of these wines and liquors, there are very, very clear indications with respect to the alcohol content or with respect to the quality which they have to maintain. And there is no departure which can be allowed from it. And also certification and monitoring to ensure that there is integrity along every point in the supply chain. In Indian products, I think most of the time we lack, we don't see that. But in certain kinds of products which do actually comply with this, for example, you have the Darjeeling tea. That is an example which even now is very, very relevant because its quality has been maintained, and they even wage war against infringers in other countries. Like, for instance, in Japan, there were cases which were instituted by Darjeeling tea to ensure that that particular GI uniqueness is maintained there. And wrong use of this particular word Darjeeling was enforced in other countries. Now, enforcement costs are very, very high, and also the system itself may be problematic. I recall an incident we had conducted a meeting of sorts for GI producers in Kerala, and one of them was narrating an incident. It was with respect to a Palakkadan rice variety. When they went to register an FIR against a very famous brand who were using that particular term in their rice packets without permission from the actual GI holders, the police themselves refused to register the case. And they cited this as a reason why GI enforcement is very, very difficult. Now, with respect to consumer awareness, how many of us were actually aware of all these different types of GIs? Aranmula mirror, most people know. But what about Changalikodan banana or Kutiyatur mangoes or Kannur handicrafts? We don't really know about it. So even I think that connection that we have, the communities have to the products must be enhanced, and only by increasing these synergies can we actually help the GI producers as well as the consumers. And I feel that there must be an economic cohesion which can only come about from the stance of a protectionist state, without which we cannot really claim anything. And I feel that the government must intervene a bit more with respect to at least, curbing activities which are passing off on GIs. For instance, if you just search for, say, Aranmula mirror, you'll find so many sites which claim to sell Aranmula mirror. But how many of them actually are sold, by the society which has registered Aranmula mirror as a GI? That is a very difficult question to answer. So I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, please let me know. This is my email ID. You can, the one on the bottom of the slide. If you have any doubts, you can write to me, or if you have any queries, you can ask right now. Thank you so much for listening.